What's happening, people? Bed and breakfast on a Monday. Good to have you all with us. Ben Heisler.
Thursday.
What did I say? A Wednesday?
You said Monday.
No, I didn't. Oh my goodness.
All the days
God, it feels like a Monday, but no.
Oh,
Thankfully it's
wow.
Thursday.
What an atrocious way to start off what I was expecting to be a really, really good show. That's like I shared and it's funny because we've had a little inside baseball here. We've talked about on Betsided social, like stay away from the gifts, move away from the gifts, step back, move yourself out of place. But there was one yesterday. I think it was involving a story that the Washington Commanders, that's going to take a few minutes to get adjusted to. The Commanders, yeah, it's not good. I actually kind of liked Washington football team. I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
It grew on me.
What's that?
It grew on me.
It kind of grew on me too. And actually, the Commanders jerseys look kind of cool, but does not flow off the tongue well at all. There was a report that they basically called around and they called the Kansas City Chiefs and said, "Hey, in the event that maybe you don't like Patrick Mahomes as much as everybody thinks you do, what would it take to get him?" And the fact that you just had that type of shooter shoot, like that was like Michael Scott, first season of The Office, chucking it from 80 feet, just throwing it over at the back of the warehouse. So I used it last night, but in my head I was like, all right, you gotta stay away from the gift. But we have we do have a fun show for you today. Ian has gotten some conversation going with some of the biggest frauds in college basketball. He wrote that up over at Betsided. We're going to dive in, see if we can go ahead and debate any of those as far as the top 5 biggest frauds in college basketball. Good opportunity to help you get prepared ahead of March Madness and conference tournament season. Donovan just released his latest NBA power rankings based on NBA futures odds. There is a very surprising team that I am very excited about that he's moved to number 2, and it is not my Chicago Bulls. Plus, of course, our best bets for Thursday. But we were talking before we got on, Donovan, you just had a rough beat last night with Miami Heat. Talk about a team that had everything locked up and was playing so well and just completely gave it away at the end.
They had an opportunity to go into Milwaukee and beat the defending champs, and I put a live bet on them at -5.5, and they were up. This is midway through the third quarter, and they were up by I would think 2 or 3 at the time. And I was all on Miami to win the game last night. So my thought process was like, okay, they're gonna win kind of comfortably. And once we're gonna get to the end of the game, Milwaukee's gonna maybe foul once, get some free throws, do all that. And they were on their way to doing that. They were up 4 with 30 seconds left, and Milwaukee sends the double to Tyler Hero at half court, and Tyler Hero does what young players do, and he just made a boneheaded mistake and tried to make an awful pass out the double. Milwaukee gets the steal, hits Chris Middleton, pull-up 3. Now it's a 1-point game with 13 seconds left. And at that point, you just know, it's just not going to go my way. I was I was hoping, I was like, okay, well, maybe Miami comes down, misses the shot, and then Milwaukee gets fouled, and they hit a free throw, and then we go to overtime, and then maybe that's the scenario that I needed in my head, and it just wasn't. It was never gonna come out, and so Tyler Hero, I'm mad at you today.
That's fair. And I was I didn't bet that game, but I liked Miami, especially there was a clip that came out with how good their help defense was, especially because Milwaukee's one of the better passing teams. And from that standpoint, they were great. I didn't bet it, but I wrote up how Indiana Rutgers would go last night over at Betsided. Yeah. And it literally happened exactly the way as I predicted, in just absolute gut-wrenching fashion, where I said, the Hoosiers are one of the best first half teams in the country. They're top 8 in rating. In net rating. And then Rutgers is a top 20 defensive team in the second half. They are going to climb their way back in. And sure enough, Indiana, in what was basically a play-in game at home against Rutgers, could not find a way to win. And now they're likely out of the NCAA tournament. And the frustrating part is that, Ian, you've talked about emo bets before, where you bet against your team in hopes that you kind of at least get some sort of a win where even if your team loses, you cash in on the bet. I can't do that with my teams. It was so frustrating watching exactly the way that I knew it would. Could have won on 2 different bets by jumping on Rutgers live in the second half and Indiana first half, and they just ugh. So I don't know if you had a rough go last night like Donovan and myself did, but please, this is an open forum for discussion.
Yeah, mine wasn't a bad beat. It was the complete opposite. Just got absolutely just pummeled. I released my video pick. My college basketball picks haven't been great lately. More on that in a little bit when we talk about our best bets for tonight. But I had a video pick for Iowa State -4 against Oklahoma State, and one of the big reasons was that they were so hot shooting recently. They were 4th in the country in effective field goal percentage over each team's last 3 games. So I thought, are they this year's Oregon State? Are they going to go on a run? They're getting hot. Last night, they scored 36 points. They shot 28.3% from the field and 2 for 17 from beyond the arc. Just one of the worst shooting performances of all time. Right after I'm pumping them up as one of the best shooting teams in the country right now. So
that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, that's rough. 36 points in a college basketball game. That's tough.
I found myself over the last handful of days overrating senior night. Like, oh well, it's senior night and they're at home and they're gonna be motivated. Ironically enough, the only team that seemed to do that was a team that you have listed. I won't say where on the biggest frauds in college basketball. But Wisconsin, I'm pretty sure and convinced the only reason that they won was because it's senior night, and they've just done that all season long. So we'll dive into that actually, because I'm actually very excited to have this conversation because earlier in the week, the IMAC college basketball ratings. So screw Ken Baum, screw college basketball analytics. The IMAC college basketball ratings are the one and only system you should be using when it comes to evaluating everything you need to know ahead of the NCAA tournament. And so I found this list to be very compelling. Your number 5 team on the list was actually a team that I surprised you had as low as you did. And then the number 1 team, I think there's some interesting debate there. So go ahead and let us know who are the top 5 biggest frauds in college basketball, because I know that Donovan and I are going to have an opinion on this.
Yeah, I am. And this list I did create a couple days ago. I might make some slight changes. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing I love more than calling teams frauds. You guys know this. So I did release this list a couple of days ago. Number 5, Providence Friars. Now, this is a team that really probably most people would say is the most fraudulent team in college basketball. And is the record a little bit better than maybe it deserves to be? Yes, I know that guy named Ken Baum, whoever that guy is, say that they're number 1 ranked in the luck factor.
He's a real person.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking. But I mean, when you look at their statistics, they're not a bad team by any means. They rank in the top 100 in almost everything. So they're a good team who's having the ball bounce their way more often than not. But that just kind of happens. That's sports. But they're a good team when you look at their statistics. They're number 5. Number 4, Alabama, who might even move up in this list because they just lost again. Didn't they just lose to someone like last night or the night before?
Yeah, I believe it was A&M.
Texas A&M?
They got trounced.
Yeah, they're a huge favorite against Texas A&M, I think, last night and lost. So Alabama will probably be moving up.
I was going to say shout out to Joe Summers, by the way, who wrote up Texas A&M as a money line upset over for us at Betsided last night.
So the thing with Alabama is they're a 3-point shooting team, 14th highest 3-point shot rate. And these 3-point shooting teams, when they get hot and can't miss from 3, they like seduce people into thinking that they're a good team. And that's what happens with Alabama year after year. It was happened a little bit more last year, but they were an overall better team last year. But this year, they're not a good team at all. They just occasionally get hot from 3 and make people think that they're good. Number 3, Kansas. Lost again the other night against TCU. Now, I wouldn't say Kansas is a bad team, but 158th in turnovers, 81st in defensive efficiency, 197th in opponent effective possession ratio. They have some worrying numbers. 206th in free throw percentage, too. That's turning the ball over, not hitting your free throws. 2 big recipes for being frauds, especially down the stretch. Number 2, I put Texas Tech. Once again, free throw shooting and turnovers, 208th in free throw shooting, 282nd in turnovers. Those are the marks of a good basketball team. And then number 1, obviously, I think the team that we kind of want to touch on here more than anything else is actually, you know what? Before I say the name, even though most people listening probably already know who it is, I'm going to explain why I think these teams are frauds in my point of view. I'm going to list statistics and where a team ranks in the top 4, and this team is first in their conference and only 1 game difference in record from the biggest fraud. This team ranks 12th in effective field goal percentage, 36th in defensive efficiency, 5th in offensive efficiency, and 38th in rebounding. If you heard those just 4 very plain basic stats, you would think, oh yeah, that sounds like a good basketball team that could be first in their conference. It is. Those numbers belong to Duke. Now the stats for this next team: 249th in effective field goal percentage, 106th in defensive efficiency, 97th in offensive efficiency, 169th in rebounding. When you hear those stats, would you guess that the team that owns those stats is for just won their conference, and some people are calling has a chance to go on a big run in a March Madness tournament? No, those numbers belong to Wisconsin. So that's why I think they're fraudulent. If you list out their stats and you wouldn't guess that they're first in their conference, those 2 teams that I just listed, their stats, they're both first in their conference. Duke has 1 more win than Wisconsin, so very similar records. But Wisconsin's frauds. The proof's right there in the statistics. You just got to look.
All right, so the list again: number 5, Providence; number 4, Alabama; number 3, Kansas, which actually caught me a little bit by surprise. Same thing with Texas Tech. I almost sort of looked at those 2, Kansas and Texas Tech, as the bigger surprises on your list than that of Providence or Wisconsin or Alabama. But Donovan, anything stand out to you from that list amongst the IMAC rankings that were recently released?
Yeah, I listen. I'm kind of on the Texas Tech fraud bandwagon. I really liked it because you look at them and they're 18-0 at home, and the fact that they can blow everybody out at home, like that's great and all, but they're not going to play a home game, right? Like, even if you know what I'm saying. Like, once you get into the tournament, you're going to be in situations where the arena is filled with half of the opposing crowd's fans, and so it's either going to be like a very, very big road game, and it's just not going to feel the same. And so that sets you up for a lot of disappointment. So I like them. I think Kansas, I don't know if I would call Kansas frauds, but I do like Ian's point of if you can't keep the ball in your possession and you can't hit free throws in March, you're not going to go far, right? Because inevitably you're going to get that one close game. And so you're just setting yourself up to make that mistake. And so I don't know if I would call them frauds, but they do have very glaring weaknesses.
So the Texas Tech was the most surprising. In Kansas, I understand it. Again, they're kind of right in my backyard. Lawrence is about 45 minutes away from where I live. I've had a chance to watch them a little bit more. I think they're a talented team, but they're kind of going to go as far as Ochai Agbaji can really take them. They're not particularly good inside. I know that David McCormick is experienced, but he's can get in foul trouble fairly easily. I was at the KU Texas Tech game in Lawrence, where neither team wanted to win because they kept missing free throws heading into the second half, and then in overtime. Texas Tech, I actually am really impressed by them. I think you talked about ability to not be able to win on the road. To sweep Texas this year, amongst everything, with all the motivation there, I thought that was a big deal. Beat them up at home, ended up winning by 6 on the road. The loss to TCU, I think, is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. But TCU is playing their best basketball at the end of the season right now, and they're back in tournament conversation. So I'm not going to necessarily hold that against them. The loss to Iowa State, maybe at the beginning of Big 12 play, isn't good, but most of their losses have been fairly close. 4-point loss to Iowa State, lost to Kansas State on the road by 9, so that doesn't look great. But then a 3-point loss in double overtime to Kansas, and then that TCU game. So I don't know if I can necessarily hang with them, especially as the number 2 most efficient defense in the country. Like, to me, that's a team that I think could still do some damage in March. But the free throw things, especially if there's another team that slows them down and they don't make shots, that's going to potentially be a problem. But the other teams, I could absolutely see them running into a first round exit.
So Ben, question for you. So Texas Tech is plus 2,000 to win the national championship right now. Do you see any value in them?
It's a really good question. I think there's value. I think if you're looking at them sort of overall in a bubble, they're top 10 in KenPom. They're number 2 adjusted defense. offensively, they're it's not like they're terrible. They're top 40 in adjusted offense. Really good when it comes to getting good quality shots inside. They shoot about 56% from inside the arc. I don't know if you can get them at 20-1, I think they're a dart throw. But Mark Adams, I made this conversation that kind of brings it back to Wisconsin with a friend of mine from before. Mark Adams kind of reminds me of Bo Ryan, like someone that's been in coaching for a long time, finally gets his opportunity at an older age, sort of a lifer in the state of Texas, and then is able to find consistency and success with a really talented defense that's able to make just enough shots on offense. So, they've gone to championship games. Bo Ryan did at Wisconsin. So I think there's value there. I think Texas Tech can get hot.
I would say Texas Tech is top 10 in KenPom, but they're number 2 in IMAC fraud rankings. So, I mean, you got to kind of compare the two.
Right.
But also, Donovan did bring up a good point that I didn't say earlier about Texas Tech, and that their average point differential plus 20.9 at home, minus 0.9 on the road. That's a 20-point swing compared to road and home splits. It's not good.
It's
dangerous. You're playing with fire. If you, I think for anybody who likes that 20-1 number, you're playing with fire. I think that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's a fairly sizable home road split. I completely get that. But if I was going to say, okay, you can either, well, I'll tell you this. Amongst the teams that WinBet has at 20-1, which is Illinois, Texas Tech, UCLA, and Villanova, I would tell you that I prefer those other 3 teams to Texas Tech. I mean, fair. Villanova, when we did our videos together, was my pick to win the Final Four. Or not to win the Final Four, but to win the college basketball championship. I thought that was by far and away the best value left on the board. So
I really like Villanova at that price.
Yeah, I think it's a terrific price, and certainly consider all the different options. But I don't know if you're going to find Villanova at a better price than 20-1 right now. And same thing with Illinois. Like those are 2 really good, really experienced teams with really good guards that make their free throws in March. So plenty more conversation. Hopefully you guys have been catching some of our best bet videos on Tuesdays going over college basketball. But the IMAC rankings going all the way from Providence down to Wisconsin, the frauds of college basketball. Really good stuff this week. Also, what came out today was our latest power rankings. And the way that you do them, Donovan, is not based on just where they rank currently, but it's relative to their odds to win the national championship. So there were some fairly big teams that are on the move this week, including a new team at the top and certainly a new team at number 2. So what amongst those teams did you think was probably the most notable of all the different movements this week?
Yeah, so in terms of movement, the 76ers have moved quite a bit, and so that was kind of obvious with James Harden coming in there. And when I wrote, I just said I have 2 words about the Sixers: scary hours, and they look good. The frustrating part, and what's gonna carry them, and is also the most frustrating part about them, is that they're going to set the officials up to blow the whistle 1,000,000 times a game.
But they don't care.
They don't care. And I would probably have them higher, but I want to see how the playoff whistle treats them because the whistle does scale back a little bit in the playoffs. And so I want to know some of these touch fouls that they're getting down low on the drive, if the officials let them play a little bit more. But the team that's really, really surprising, they only moved up 1 spot, but they have the lowest. They're tied for the lowest odds in, I think, the top 5 is the Memphis Grizzlies. And I have the Grizzlies at 2 behind the Phoenix Suns. For a majority of the year, I've had the Suns 1 and the Warriors 2. I dropped the Warriors to 6, put Memphis at 2. And listen, the Grizzlies are special. They are a really, really good team. They're 4th. Where are they? They're 6th in net rating. They are 4th in offensive rating, and then they're 8th in defensive rating for the entire season, right? And you saw last week what Ja Morant can do, and scoring 50, hitting the buzzer beater at the end, the dunk on Pirtle. He's electrifying in everything that he does. It's like it's so fun to watch, and I've been getting frustrated because for this entire week everybody's been comparing him to year 3 Derrick Rose, and that singular season of Derrick Rose is one of my favorite players ever. But Ja deserves it because they're that good, and I think once we get into the playoffs, they're gonna have to beat the Warriors and the Suns, right? To get to the finals, they're gonna have to do that. If they play this,
go ahead.
My thought process for them is the Warriors right now, even with if Draymond isn't there, then I think Memphis can beat them in a 7-game series. And then Phoenix, we've seen Chris Paul have injury issues in the playoffs his entire career. If that happens again, they're liable to lose. And so that's why I see a lot of value with Memphis this year.
They've been really fun, and I don't typically pat myself on the back, but Morant and that comp to Derrick Rose, there was some stat that I found at the beginning of the season that looked at that type of trajectory and said, like, that's a move that could make a lot of sense. And it was part of the reason that I jumped on him as an MVP pick. I think WinBet had it 35-1. It was as high as 50-1 at some books at that point. He's been sensational. They're committed on the defensive side of the ball. Jaren Jackson, I think you can make a legitimate argument for Defensive Player of the Year. He leads the NBA in blocks. So they're a really fun team, and I think their movement is warranted. What I'm also curious about is, despite odds makers continuing to support Brooklyn for whatever reason, they're still the number 1 team to come out of the East. And again, they're getting likely Kyrie back to be able to play both home and away. Durant's going to be back in the next, potentially even this week. You have them all the way at 16. How much higher do you envision them getting?
I can see them, getting back into the top 10, potentially into the top 5. There was a tweet yesterday that says Ben Simmons might not even be able to play for the remainder of March. And so if you don't have him there, if you're still having Kyrie on a part-time basis, because until Kyrie is able to come back, and until New York State makes whatever law, available for Kyrie to play, then, and you just have Kevin Durant, Durant is great, and he's gonna make them much better than what they are. And they're certainly not gonna lose 9 games in a row on Durant's watch, and that's not gonna happen. But if you're talking about winning a championship or going far in the playoffs, Ben has to be ready, and Ben has to be there, because he's gonna be so important to what they do on the defensive side of the ball. And then Kyrie has to be there as well. They need good guard play. They like Dragic is there, and he's gonna be able to settle them down a little bit. But there's just a ceiling that you have with Kyrie, and they don't have that right now. And it's probably going to be the same thing that we saw last year, where if they are not fully together, if they're not healthy and together, then what are the Nets? And that's been the story for the last 2 years with them.
It's a really interesting call. Other teams that are at the top, obviously Phoenix number 1, Memphis number 2, Miami is number 3. We talked about Philly, their movement to number 4. You still have the Bulls fairly high at number 5 as well. They're still dealing with some health injuries and concerns there, but DeRozan's been great other than that game against Miami earlier this week, which stopped his 30-plus scoring streak, I think up around 8 or 9 games. He's been phenomenal, still in the MVP conversation. And watch out for Dallas too. Like, that is a team that is continuing to claw their way back Doncic has been unbelievable in his last 10, 11 games. Actually, not even more than that, maybe his last 18, 19 games, MVP type numbers. He's still 30-1 in case you think that there's a run left for him over at WinBet. Speaking of the NBA, let's dive into best bets. Donovan and I have NBA plays for today. Ian, you are on the college side, and it seems like based on what I have written down, I think we have an emo bet from you tonight when it comes to going against UC Irvine. So tell me why you're going against your team, the Anteaters, and then I also have to ask you about something that you told me earlier this week, which I found fascinating. So go ahead.
You guys watch the Avengers at all?
Love it.
I saw the last one, so
I love Marvel. Talk to me.
I needed a little bit of catch up on what the heck was going on, but I think I fairly understood most of the events.
So, Donovan, when Thanos got the Soul Stone, what did he have to do?
He had to give up Gamora.
He had to sacrifice what he loved.
Everything.
I'm on a cold streak for my college basketball picks. The only way that I can get back in the winning column is I need to sacrifice who I love. So I'm betting against my UC Irvine Anteaters tonight. I'm going Cal. How do you pronounce it? Poly?
I think it's
Cal
Cal
Poly.
Cal
Poly plus 10. The biggest thing in this game, because to be honest, I knew UC Irvine was playing tonight. I knew we were doing the show this morning. So I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I pick UC Irvine? But then, of course, I started handicapping the game, and I was like, oh, Cal Poly? Poly.
Poly.
I was like, they're the obvious bet in this game. Big reason why. Both offenses absolutely stink. That's what's kind of killed UC Irvine. They're supposed to be the best team in the Big West this year, but their offense has just been atrocious. Both teams are decent defensively, but this is one very interesting stat when it comes to Cal here. 287th an opponent 3-point field goal percentage, so you can really attack this team from the perimeter, but 18th in the country an opponent 2-point field goal percentage. So one of the best interior defenses in the country, one of the worst perimeter defenses in the country. Well, UC Irvine doesn't shoot the 3-ball, 11th in 2-point shot rate. Almost all of their shots come from down low, and now they're playing a team that's going to fit, is going to be able to stop that. Like I said, very good interior defense, poor perimeter defense. So terrible stylistic matchup for UC Irvine here. UC Irvine's also 320th in turnovers per possession. The unders for UC Irvine this year, 13-5-1, extremely low-scoring games, but now they're going to lay 10 points on the road. That seems insane to me. So Cal Poly plus 10 at home against UC Irvine. I'm sacrificing what I love to start a little hot streak here.
First of all, that's a brilliant play by you. Two things stand out to me really fast. The first is that I don't know who's going to score in this game. I don't know what the under is currently right now at WinBet, but I'm very tempted to go in that direction because there is going to be no offense in this game.
Right.
At all. You're talking about teams with adjusted offensive efficiency in either the 240s, and then Cal Poly's is bottom 10 in all of college basketball. They're bottom 15 in effective field goal percentage. They turn the ball over a ton. This is just going to be a gross game. So I appreciate you making that sacrifice to the basketball gods in hopes that we can get a winning streak going. But this does not look like a fun game to watch. By the way, you told us the other day, since you came into the States, did not grow up with a lot of college basketball, that you didn't know any fight songs.
That's correct.
Donovan went to the University of Texas, which has a very famous fight song. Indiana has a fairly well-known fight song. But I was going to actually jump on, I knew that UC Irvine was playing today. I was going to make a show bet with you that the loser of this game had to sing the opponent's fight song on social media after the game. But since you're already going against your own team, we might have to find another opportunity to make that bet so that you can learn the world of the great fight songs of college basketball.
Well, I'm hoping for a UC Irvine victory tonight, but just a single-digit victory would be perfect. Then I'm a winner on both sides. But yeah, Canada obviously watch American sports, but college sports we don't watch at all. So I only got into college basketball and college football kind of once I got into sports media. In Canada, some people watch NFL, obviously NBA, but like nobody watches college sports up there. So I don't even know what a fight song is. Well, I know what a fight song is, but I couldn't even hum a single one. I don't know any of them.
Yeah, well, we'll get that changed. And for the record, like Canada, one thing that they absolutely have over the United States, and I don't even know if this is a hot take, far better national anthem. Oh, Canada.
I disagree.
Really? I love Oh Canada.
That sucks. It's basic.
Really? Oh,
you know what I think? You know what I think it is? I think people hear their own national anthem so much that they get sick of it. So I think most Canadians think the American national anthem is better just because they're sick of hearing the Canadian one, and most Americans think the opposite because they're sick of hearing their own national anthem.
Donovan, you're a music guy, like purely from like a tone and a music setting.
Oh.
Like the national anthem is all over the place. It's really hard to sing. Like Oh Canada is dun 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 dun.
I think
it holds up. It's like I would say America the Beautiful should be the national anthem because it's just a better song to sing. The national anthem's all over the place.
No, America the Beautiful is much more basic than the Star Spangled Banner. But like I think the ending of the Star Spangled Banner, there's just too many variables with our anthem, because at the end, depending on who's singing it, how long are you going to hold that final note out? Are you going to go and hit that one up top? Which one are you going to do?
The high note is big.
Exactly. And so there's too much. There's too much. Very underrated playing this though in the national anthem. I love the Mexico national anthem is fire.
Interesting.
I can't say I've heard it.
Love it.
But the American national anthem, when they go, oh, say does, like the ending of it gets me fired up and ready to go.
All right, the ending is.
I've never been fired up by the anthem. Let's relax here. Let's relax.
The ending's not bad. It's the first part of it that's just this is very meh. All right, I've gotten us off the rails with anthem and fight song talk. So please save the show, Donovan. You and I are both going NBA. Who do you like tonight?
Yeah. So we were talking about, before the show about going back to the wells after betting on the Heat last night, and I'm gonna do the same thing tonight. So I bet on the over in the last Bulls-Hawks game, and they failed me. But I'm going back to it tonight. The over is at 231.5. So the last game ended at 112-108. The two games prior to that, 131-117, 130-118. I think the Bulls and the Hawks both are coming off of losses. They're both going to be in a very good bounce back situation. The Hawks have hit the over in 3 of their last 5 games, and the Bulls have scored over 120 in 4 of their last 6 wins. I think Chicago wins tonight, and so I think that DeRozan, after a bad game in Miami, he's going to get back to where he's been. And so I think that at 231, it's actually a little bit lower than what I expected. And so I think this is a solid play tonight. This is where I'm going.
Over on Hawks and the Bulls down in Atlanta tonight. I like that play as well. Let me ask you guys a question. Who do you think has the worst home record against the spread in the NBA this year? Any initial thoughts off the top?
Oh, I know I know the answer.
Okay. Do you know the answer, Donovan?
No, I do not.
All right, tell me, Ian.
It's got to be the Nets, doesn't it?
It sure is. The Brooklyn Nets against the spread at home this year have the worst home ATS record in the NBA. They have covered in home games 20.7% of the time. They're 6-23-1. The two teams that are better than them, Orlando and Houston, they are the two worst teams in the NBA. Brooklyn is atrocious. They're against the spread plus minus is minus 7.8 over at team rankings. Like they're not only are they not covering at home, they're not close. Brooklyn last 3 home games, they lost by 14 to Washington. Garbage. They lost by 23 to Boston. Good team, but Boston's not necessarily going to kill you offensively. They're going to beat you down defensively. And then they lost by 36 to Toronto, which is dealing with all sorts of injuries at home. 6-23-1 into home against the spread. They get to play Miami, and I love the Heat in this situation, even though it is 2 straight road games and back-to-backs, which has actually been an area where Miami's been fairly good this year. They're 36-21-1, 36-26-1 against the spread overall. On the road, they're 21-13-1. And Jimmy Butler just put up an absolute stinker last night. Went 2 of 14, had 6 points in the game. Miami blew it on the road. They're going to come back focused because most of that game they played well. The line actually feels a little bit of a trap to me. I'm hoping it's just more reflective of Miami having back-to-back games on the road as opposed to it being a trap. But if you can still find it at 3, go ahead and back Miami to go ahead and get it done tonight. Brooklyn's just atrocious. And until they start getting their stars back, you have to fade them, especially at home, even with the back-to-back. I think Miami figures it out despite Butler and Adebayo playing 37, 38 minutes last night. So those are our best bets for today. Always appreciate you guys checking us out here on Bet and Breakfast. We will be back with you on Monday for a brand spanking new edition with myself, Reed Wallach, and Peter Dewey as we start week 2 of conference tournament basketball. We will be less than a week out from March Madness. So plenty of coverage coming up. We've had all sorts of videos and fun stuff over at Betsided as well. So make sure you guys check that out as well. For Ian, for Donovan, I'm Ben. Always appreciate you guys having a good time with us. May all of your best hit tonight. Talk to you soon. So long.